Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales. We had talked in this show before about what does it mean to manage an educational program, what does it mean to be in charge of an institution in education, and basically we had looked at the management perspective. We had never talked before to students, and what does it mean for a student to be part of an educational organization. Well, today we have the honor to have with us Tony Corrales, who is somebody who I'm really proud of because he's my son, but also because he's a first-generation immigrant who had been successful in public education and most recently has been accepted to the top colleges in America. So we're going to talk today to him about what does it mean to be a product of public education and what are the keys to succeed in public education in America. Tony, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. How you doing?
Okay. All right, why don't we start by letting you introduce yourself to the audience and kind of letting them know how do you get to where you are in your career.
Hi, I'm Antonio Corrales. I've been in public education since I was about 4 years old. Came to the United States permanently when I was 2 years old, and like my father said, I'm the first generation American in my family. I've been in Galveston, a small island, for the past 12 years of my public education. Went to a public elementary school, a public middle school, and then a public high school. And I think it's prepared me excellently for the next level of my education. I plan on pursuing a business or economics degree and ultimately law school. And I think the public education that I've received here in Galveston has been extraordinary for aiding me in doing that in the future.
Awesome. And the thing is that you started and you studied in public education since pre-K, literally, and you went through different stages, including being in a dual language program where you're able to learn English and Spanish at the same time, right? And being exposed to different scenes. So if we talk, let's start by asking you about what does it mean to be the son of immigrant parents. I mean, what are from your perspective, what are the things that you can tell that being the son of immigrant parents played within your educational career?
I think being the son of immigrant parents has molded me into a better person indirectly in a different way than you might think. The thing about being the son or child of immigrant parents, especially first generation, is that everything's new both to you and your parents in this country. So you're kind of, in a sense, on your own when it comes to the whole college process because it's all as new to them as it is to you. Whereas if you have family with roots here, they might be able to aid you a little more in the whole process. So I think being the child of immigrant parents has kind of helped me to figure things out for myself without kind of having a crutch or kind of having it all given to me, So it's definitely aided me in becoming my own person, having to find challenges and things for myself, and having to figure out how to do things myself rather than just being told how to do them.
And do you think that being the son of immigrant parents, what were the challenges to that? Because I mean, obviously, it's great that you have that positive, but for somebody who's looking at us right now, what are the challenges, especially educators that may be looking at us right now? What are the challenges that even you that grew up with functional parents who were both educators, what are the challenges that you can foresee that a first generation immigrant student may face?
Absolutely. In the same way that I kind of made it into a positive, into something that's helped me, it can 100% just go the opposite way, and that doesn't have anything to do with the person. It could just be circumstances. So funny thing is, when somebody actually asked me my most difficult challenge growing up in a college interview or something like that, my first thing to go to is having immigrant parents, actually, because going just back to the same thing I said, not having somebody to just kind of tell you what to do, having to figure everything out on your own, if you're not successful in doing that, then that's why immigrant, first-generation American students are at a higher risk of dropping out or just failing in the public education system, is because there is a large percentage of them that just can't figure things out for themselves. And when you don't have someone there to tell you what to do, that can just instantly cause failure.
And what about the sense of safety? I mean, do you feel safe all the time? Because one of the things that first generation immigrants lack of is the support system from direct family, maybe family who are far away, or you cannot call an aunt or an uncle right away all the time, or you don't have all the big family that usually people who grew up in the place have.
Yeah.
Do you feel throughout your career, do you feel unsafe or lack of support at a certain point?
I wouldn't necessarily say unsafe, but what I would say is a lot easier for me to go down faster than my counterparts and my peers who have been here longer. Having only maybe 2 direct families in my family, so my own house family and then my aunt's family and Katie near me, means that one misstep or mistake by my part can just ultimately cause my crash, since there is less of a support system. So it's kind of made me had to stay more on a straight line as compared to my peers and counterparts that have been here longer. As I said, they kind of have more wiggle room. They're allowed to kind of mess up or do something wrong and then still stay on the track that they were meant to be.
They have more room for mistakes.
Exactly.
So one of the things that you experienced too is when you were in your elementary levels, you went to a high percentage of a school who had high percentage of economically disadvantaged students, and I will say pretty diverse. I mean, 45% African American, 45% Hispanic, and 10% Caucasian. How does that dealing with economically disadvantaged students change your life? Knowing that your parents came from another country, they were pretty wealthy in another country, they went here, then they have to reinvent themselves, starting from the bottom. How does that change your life or mold your life?
Yeah, it all started with my elementary school, as you said, but I think that's a big part of Galveston as a whole is the diversity, and you can just find about any kind of person in Galveston, and the best part is that the majority of them are going to be very accepting and welcoming to you as well. So I think learning to deal with that in elementary school at such a young age, that's just kind of what I grew up with, was a large variety of people from all sorts of different backgrounds, and everybody kind of has a different story. So being able to deal with those, being able to deal with that situation along with the other situations that I found myself later in life, such as the completely opposite at my middle school, it's just kind of taught me how to manage groups, lead groups, and work with people from all kinds of backgrounds, regardless of what their story might be and what resources they might have allocated to them.
So you learn how to navigate as well.
Absolutely, and kind of learn that everybody has something to offer. Regardless of what that might be, everybody has a tool that they can contribute to a team, and you have to learn how to find those. It might be more apparent in some people than others.
So it gave you more confidence.
Yeah.
Now, what about that stigma? Because that school that you went back in that day used to have the stigma that, by the way, you conveniently went there because we were working there. So they had that stigma that students didn't get good education there. Did that stigma change you through your career, or was something that you ended up not feeling? I mean, you felt that you got a good education there first, and second, did that stigma of that school change you throughout your career?
So that's the thing. I feel like the education was as high of a quality of education as I could have gotten at any of the other elementary schools. The thing was that having a high percentage of economically disadvantaged students, the students came in maybe less prepared and got less help at home, making our scores and overall look of the school worse than it actually was. I feel that the education I got was completely fine, set me up perfectly for middle school. I went to what was considered the most rigorous education-wise public middle school on the entire island, and strived and did excellently well, and that was because my elementary school education trained me so well. And it's not necessarily a stigma that follows you. It doesn't have a major impact in your life, but to this day, when people might ask me where I go to elementary school and I say the name of my elementary school, I get a lot of surprised looks. Since I'm one of the top students in my class, nobody kind of expects that school to breed one of the top students in the class. So there's definitely that prejudice about the school, but the education is no different.
So in your opinion, it was more a reflection of the struggles of this student population at that point, and not of the teachers and the educators there. In your opinion, the education was the same. It just was the type of students that the educators needed to deal with.
I feel that me and the few other peers that I have that I still remain friends with from that school. I feel like we all came out equally as prepared as the students from the other schools, if not more prepared.
Do you see that? Do you think that school that you went to needed more resources? Do you ever feel that they were lacking of specific areas that other schools did have? What we consider the rich schools had. Do you ever feel that?
I felt,
Or
looking back and reflecting on it a bit, my school kind of did lack educational enrichment opportunities that some other schools had. For example, I saw the other schools that I say the education's the same. They might have had more programs after schools for the students that were already doing fine in class but wanted to further their education in another area. My school didn't necessarily offer that. More so went after the route of extracurriculars after school, but not necessarily educational related ones. So, whereas the other schools had book clubs of sorts that my school tried to implement towards the end, but they weren't necessarily as successful. So that's
when you were there.
I think I would say exactly.
What about the 21st century? Were you there when they started implementing
the 21st century program? I was involved in it a little bit, not much though, not nearly heavily enough to provide some accurate feedback on it. But I do remember, I think about it highly. I don't have any negative thoughts about that program.
Okay. Okay, and then moving on, when you went to that middle school that you were saying, it was a magnet school, do you feel, you were saying the rubric to get into that school was kind of strict, you need to have good grades, good behavior. Do you ever felt less than anybody there, any of your peers in terms of academics in that middle school, or behind?
Not at all.
Not at all.
I told you, I felt like I came out of elementary school just as, if not more prepared than my peers from the other schools.
Okay, what about your, so let's move on to the public education in America. What are your thoughts now that you have experienced elementary, middle school, and high school in public education? You're about to graduate next month as a high schooler. What are your thoughts about public education in America? Now, your entire career has been in Texas, of course, so you're gonna be biased towards the state. But what are your general thoughts about public education in America?
Speaking only from experience in Galveston, Texas, the public schools have been more than I could have ever asked for. Behavior's totally fine. You don't see any ridiculous people acting up, doing anything terribly wrong. It's a regular school. You get a perfectly fine education. As you can see, coming from a public school, I've still made it to a lot of top institutions, like you said earlier, and did fine on my SAT, did fine on my ACT, on my standardized tests, had a fine GPA, everything kind of lines up telling you that if I would have went to a private school or a public school, I don't think anything would have turned out any differently. I think I got the exact same education at obviously a lower cost, and I wouldn't take it back. If I could go back and change my education, I wouldn't do that. And
you have a lot of friends who came from private schools, yeah, right, that ended up feeding to that high school. Do you feel, now that you start mentioning, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next question, but do you feel that the high school provided you with your resources to be successful in what you said, your SAT, your ACT, your career advice? I mean, we of course, as parents, because we're educated, we help you, gave you the support, but looking at it objectively, do you feel that you have all the help, and also not only you, but your peers to reach to the promised land?
I'm not sure if I would have been able to do it without my domestic help. I'm not sure if I would have made it as far as I would have, because you guys, as my parents, were really involved in making sure that I was very active in extracurriculars, whether that be sports or other clubs. And then you were also very on me about my grades and my schooling, and test prepped me for my standardized tests as well. So you guys played a big part in that. So going solely off of public education, I don't believe that, if you don't have any domestic help, I don't believe that you can go just through public education, the public education system, and the public education clubs, and then make it to those higher level institutions. I feel that a lot of work can come from home, but that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody has to be helping you.
Correct.
You have to be wanting to put in that own work from home, and kind of look for your own opportunities outside of the public school system to help enrich you and succeed.
So parental involvement being a big part.
That's a very big part.
And maybe school having, for parents who are not educators, providing that help to those parents to guide their students.
A bit more transparency. I know there can be a bit of a confusion. For me, a lot of it happened going into high school. The whole GPA and SAT, ACT thing was all very Greek to me. I didn't know what any of it meant. So definitely more transparency and help and helping people understand how significant these things really are.
Well, now you bring it up. Let's follow up on that question because we may have a lot of students looking at us right now, having a lot of kids who are in high school right now or are going to high school and they wonder, what can I do to get to those colleges that Tony got? They may, some of them may feel, okay, I work hard, but I want to work smart. So what are, in your opinion, the keys to succeed in public education and reach the best colleges in America?
So just kind of putting it as best as I can, I'm going to give you a rough 4-year plan, sort of.
Yeah.
When you come into high school as a freshman, you kind of want to have a rough idea of at least the classes that you want to take. If you're looking to make it into a top institution, the only classes you should be taking are AP, dual credit, IB classes, the highest level classes, honors that you can take, because even if they don't help you in your GPA, colleges, especially the private ones, will look at rigor of course as something in their rubric to help bring students in. So you definitely want to take the most advanced classes possible going into your freshman year and onwards. Freshman year, I would also recommend you establishing at least one of your 2 or 3, I recommend in all of high school that you come up with at least 2 or 3 clubs, organizations, activities that you feel really passionate about. I wouldn't worry about trying to join every club and every organization, trying to do everything. Pick a couple that you feel very strongly about, become very involved in those, and let those build up your resume. So your freshman year, you should definitely come up with one of those. Ideally, in the best world possible, it would be a sport. I found that through the college application process, seeing the schools that my friends and I both got into, that playing a sport, being a varsity letter in the sport, the longer that you play the sport for, the longer you're a varsity letter sport athlete for, it can all be very beneficial in helping you get into a university. I was the 4-year captain of my 4-year varsity tennis team player and captain of it since I was a sophomore, and I think that was really beneficial in helping me get into the schools that I did. Then your sophomore year is when you kind of have to start really planning for college. That's when you should go, and that sophomore year is when you'll have the most time on your hands, to be completely honest with you. So sophomore year, I would start trying to find a second or third organization that you may be really interested in, and it would be really good if you could have a community service project as well. One big thing that specifically private schools look for is having a big community service project. So not just kind of creating a club at your school or something like that, but doing something that can have a permanent impact on your community even after you're gone. You want to try to come up with a cool project like that your sophomore year, and then junior year, really grind out all your SAT and ACTs. I would recommend, so what I did, and I give all the credit to my mom on this one because it's the smartest way to do it. She signed me up for an SAT prep course. I believe it was in September, and then October came around, and so I did the prep course all of September, and October comes around, and I have my PSAT and then the SAT 1 week after. So the knowledge was fresh in my head, and I was able to take the PSAT and the SAT.
And the PSAT is important, right?
The PSAT is very important. That's something that high school students...
Can you explain that why?
Yeah, of course. That's something probably most underrated by high school students would be the PSAT. The PSAT is a test that it's free to take your sophomore year, and I think all sophomores are required to take it if you're in a public school. And it just kind of tells you, it's a rough estimate of where you'll be on the SAT when you actually go to take it. And then your junior year, you actually have to pay for the test. But if you do well enough, you can qualify for something called the National Merit Scholarship. And it goes solely off of your PSAT test score. So I was one of the few that took that very seriously in my school and completed that prep course for it, and went on to actually do very well and was selected as a National Merit semifinalist earlier this school year, and found out that I was a finalist and a scholar about a month ago or a couple months ago. And that's another really big part of my resume because I've been able to put that I'm a National Merit Scholar and a National Hispanic Recognition Scholar as well. And that's just something else building up your resume is very important.
So that basic PSAT is in the sophomore year.
You take it for the first time your sophomore year, but that doesn't count towards anything. you take it again, actually paying for it your junior year, and that's when it'll count towards
That's what it
national
counts to.
merit. You can get a perfect score your sophomore year, and it won't count towards
It
the
won't count.
scholarship.
Okay.
Yes.
But it's important to get prepared when you're gonna take it for the junior.
Very important.
Because a lot of people underestimate that test, right?
Yeah. Over the summer, between sophomore and junior year, the first few months of junior year, I would really recommend studying and prepping for the SAT or ACT, and then I would recommend spending the next 6 months trying to get the best score possible. And then the summer of your junior year and the first semester of your senior year is all college applications. You're gonna have to really focus on those. I applied to 12 different schools and had to do about 3 different applications, being Applied Texas, the common application, the University of California school application, and it can become very stressful and will take over a lot of your time, having to set up a resume, write your college essays, your supplemental essays, and then fill all these applications out. Can be a ton of stress on your shoulders, so you should definitely take the time and prepare to do that and start with a lot of time.
And it can be overwhelming, right?
Yeah, and it's definitely not something that you can do in a day or two. You can't just decide, oh, I'm going to apply to college today. It's you have to start preparing for it as early as I started preparing for it halfway through my junior year and still didn't get my applications in until some as late as January 1st of this year. So it definitely takes time and a lot of preparation to get the best application possible.
And those essays are similar from university to university, or they change a lot? Can you use some of the same aspects?
Absolutely. So the essays aren't as bad. I applied to 12 different schools, but ended up only having to write maybe 3 or 4 essays because you're able to reuse a lot of the schools will ask not the same but similar prompts, and you can always just modify the same essay. I must have modified one essay probably 10 times and submitted it to all the different schools that I applied to. So I would definitely focus on writing maybe a good solid 4 or 5 core essays that you have down pat that you can just modify and adapt to fit into the rest of your colleges.
And then also the other aspect that you also kind of mentioned was the completing all the forms such as the FAFSA and all that part, right? It can be also overwhelming, right?
Yeah, for the financial aid process is also kind of a nightmare just because there's so much information that you kind of have to have on hand to fill them out.
Now, did the school provide any help on that? Or not at all?
Me personally, I didn't receive any help from the school.
So that's something that maybe schools need to start looking at that, to start providing like a FAFSA day, or
absolutely.
Especially for parents who are not proficient on that area, because it could be overwhelming, and students may need a lot of paperwork from their parents.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of tax forms and stuff. You have to be prepared to fill out the FAFSA, so it's something that you definitely have to.
Now, one aspect that you didn't mention much was, so in your opinion, if you're going to a state university, taking dual credits is important, right? In community colleges.
Yeah, just to give a quick rundown for anybody that might not understand those terms yet. In high school, there's a variety of different classes that you can take. There's AP classes, which are advanced placement classes, which are just honors classes in which at the end of the class, you take an AP test, scored from 1 to 5, and depending on your score on that test will depend on whether the college that you select to go to will give you credit for that class or not. There's then regular classes, which are just high school classes that you can take. And at my school, the third option of classes that are offered are dual credit classes, which are classes that you kind of take through your local college, which for me is the Galveston Community College. You take them through that college, and they'll actually transfer. For me, that I'm considering going to the University of Texas next year, my credits that I've taken in high school through Galveston College will transfer over to the University of Texas for in dual credit. And some schools also offer IB, which is International Baccalaureate programs, and I don't know how to explain those too well, but I know those are another high-level form of class in which you also take a test at the end to receive college credit. Okay. So when you're going throughout high school, you definitely want to kind of have a rough idea of where you're planning on going, just so you can plan out what classes to take. Me, throughout my 4 years in high school, I was really thinking that I was going to go out of state, and out-of-state universities and private universities don't tend to accept dual credit as they come from just a community college or your local college.
Well, right now at this very point, you're not sure where you're going to get. Right?
Yeah, I'm actually. I think I've narrowed it down to the final 2 schools that I'm between are the University of Texas and the University of Chicago for me. But so I took AP all of my high school, and the thing about AP is AP becomes equivalent to dual credit if you can get a 3 on the test. So the University of Texas, as it accepts all my dual credit by just passing the class, it would accept all my AP that I got at least a 3 on the test for, which is fairly easy to do. So it's okay to take AP. I would recommend taking AP if you're not sure where you're going yet, because AP gives you more flexibility in being able to transfer the college credit. And if you're thinking about going to a high-level institution, there's a possibility that none of your dual credit will transfer, which would just be a waste of time and money for you. So, but definitely, if you know you're for sure going in state. If I knew going into high school that I was going to the University of Texas, like a lot of my friends did, they took dual credit their entire high school career, and that means that all they had to do was pass that class, and they would receive college credit for it. So
And they can save a lot of money in college.
yeah, absolutely. I'm able to do it because of my AP credits that I was able to successfully pass, but a lot of my friends were also able to just go into college as a sophomore or a junior and save 2 or 3 years out of their, save 1 or 2 years out of their education just by having taken these classes in high school. So that's another very important thing that can save you a lot of time and money in college. And it also may be a lot smarter to take a dual credit class in high school if you know that that class is hard in college. Like, I was able to take AP chemistry my sophomore year, received a passing score, and will get credit at that for that class if I go to the University of Texas at Austin, as compared to having to actually take a UT chemistry course, which would prove to be a lot more difficult than what I did in high school.
And what about the regular grades in their classes? That played a role too, right? Being your ranking in your cohort in your high school.
Yes, of course. That's something that I would definitely stress. The thing, I kind of had a misconception about the whole GPA and rank going into my freshman year. I was thinking of it as the most important thing, where it turns out it's not. It's obviously very important, specifically for public universities such as the University of Texas and A&M, for example, in Texas, that go off percentages and class rank to accept students. So, for example, the University of Texas right now, I believe you have to be in the top 6% in your class rank to be automatically accepted in the school, and A&M, I believe, is 10%.
Okay.
So for those schools, it is very important to have a good GPA. And when you're applying out of state as well to private schools, it's also important to have a solid GPA, but it's definitely not the end-all be-all. I know valedictorians that haven't gotten into any private schools, and I know kids that are 50th in their class that have gotten into Harvard and Stanford. It really all, it can end up, a lot more of it comes down to your SAT, your ACT, your extracurriculars, because I believe that those are a more accurate reflection of what your actual intellectual and personal capabilities than just a
So
letter grade.
it's like a holistic evaluation. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not only either being number one or number two, which is important, but it's not the entire.
Exactly.
You may not get into the college just by being that if you're lacking of the other
Yes,
aspects.
you 100% don't just want to focus on having that highest GPA. That shouldn't be your main goal in high school, especially not to get into those top institutions. It's a lot better to be 50th in your class with a 1500 on your SAT than to be number one on your class with a 1200. It's you should definitely focus on it.
Having a balanced approach.
Absolutely, you wanna look like an all-around candidate when applying to colleges.
Well, one of the things that we were seeing is at University of Chicago, for example, they ended up the students that they select. 50% of them have been in varsity teams, right?
I think it was a higher amount. I think it was something like 60% of admitted students to the University of Chicago had played a varsity sport. And I think I remember some numbers from Harvard a few years ago. I read a book and it was also very similar. Like over half of the students admitted, at least. The numbers can range from up to 80% sometimes as well, have played a varsity sport in high school. That's why I stressed it is very important, if possible, to play an athletic and letter in that sport as well, because it can prove super important.
Now, with all that, because all those tips can be overwhelmed for people. What were the fun parts of, besides getting the acceptance letters? I guess that's pretty cool. What were the funnest part of all the journey?
Yeah, you have to enjoy your time. I spent a lot of high school ready to get out of there, but no, you definitely have to enjoy your time. High school is probably the last time that you'll have some downtime in your life, so you have to make sure to enjoy it. You know, you're also learning a lot in high school, growing. You're really finding yourself through these next 4 years or last 4 years, whatever it might be. So it's a really important time in your development, not just educationally, but as a person. And I think you should really take the time to try to find other interests, and find what you're really passionate about. This is the best time to do that, besides college, obviously, but even going into college, you kind of have to have something that you're passionate about in school and out of school. For me, I found my passions in business and the financial sector in school, and then found my passion in tennis and hanging out with friends outside of school. So you definitely find the things that you're most into and most love, because they say if you work doing what you love, you don't actually work a day in your life. So definitely take that time
That's pretty cool. And what about, so to finalize, how do you see the future of public education, and what would you change?
Changing in public education. I see the future of public education becoming a bit more personalized.
Okay.
I think it can be a bit easy in public education to just kind of feel like a number. And that means that if you start failing out or having a rough time in school, there's not going to be many people that notice or care enough to help get you out of that hole. So if I had to offer any improvements, it would definitely be to offer more personalized assistance to students, especially if you notice a student falling off, whether that be in behavior or academics. There should definitely be a support system, a net there to catch them, or somebody there to at least check up on them or help them get back to their original standing, because that can all definitely get lost in the sea of people that is public education.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you one more time for being with us today. I want to tell my folks over there, my viewers, that we have these videos and many others on Antonio Corrales YouTube channel. Let's talk about education with Antonio Corrales and sterlingevaluationassessment.com. Please help somebody today, and see you next time.
Thanks.